So I've numbered all the questions that Becky has provided from 1 to 44. I've got a random number generator on Google, and whatever number it stops at, somebody has to answer that question. How are we all ready?
Bring it on.
Okay, random generator 28. So the question is, if you could travel in time, where would you go, to the future or into the past, and why?
Oh gosh.
Jonny. I'm just going to choose who, random.
Future. Let's say future. And why would I go into the future? Because I'm hoping in the future they've invented a massive cream egg and I could eat it.
That's really hard to follow, Jonny, actually.
No,
Exactly.
who knows?
Okay.
Don't get in the session now, guys.
Number 9. This one's for, I don't know who. Why do... Oh, no, it's one of Naomi's ones. Why do we break, then mend ourselves, only to get broken again? Is it worth it? Charmaine.
I don't think we actually break ourselves to mend ourselves. I think we just have challenges in life that can cause us to break ourselves. We don't always know how to deal with it. And I think also when we break ourselves, it's a case of growing, because I think sometimes when we think we know what we should be doing or need to do, we don't always want to do that. So we try and put ourselves in the opposite direction and make ourselves do things that we think we ought to do rather than should do, but they're not always the right things to do. So then we end up being in a quandary and feel broken and hurt because we're actually not doing what we've been made to do. But when we do go the way that we should do, and we step into what God has for us, then it's, yes, we still get hurts, but I also think as well that our hurts can help other people, in the sense of, if you've had a wound and someone else is having been affected by a wound similar to what you've had, you can actually help that person through that. So yeah, that's my answer to that question.
Good answer.
Very good.
Okay, number 27. What is one extreme sport you would never try, and one would you want to try?
Ooh. What's classed as extreme as well?
I would say any sport is extreme.
Yeah. I probably would never try skydiving, just because I'm not a fan of heights as it is. So the fact of like just falling straight to the earth.
Quite a big height, yeah.
Yeah. I don't really know if there's one that I would want to try. I'm not a massive risk taker in that aspect, but yeah. I don't know.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, for me, 25, that's one, just about it. If you could swap lives with someone for one day, who would it be with and why? Ooh, well, obviously not a member of the royal family this week. But I think, if I could swap, do you think they have to be alive, that person?
Doesn't say that.
It's not something that's possible, is it? So you could say anybody and it's fine.
Oh, that's true. I would love to be like a courtier in like an Elizabethan, like in Queen Elizabeth's court or King Henry VIII's court, you know, when you got to wear all the dresses, but be, you know, and just sort of see how it all worked and eat weird stuff, but only for a day, you know, eat swans. And then just I can come back and go, no, you don't really want to wear funny dresses and eat swans.
Okay. I don't know what I thought you were going to say then, but it wasn't that.
What would you have said?
I remember we did this in the small group a few weeks ago, and I said that I'd want to swap places with Becky for a day. And bizarrely, she said me as well.
Like hard work.
Well, I just to get Becky's mind works in a wonderful way, and I'd love to experience it just for one day, just for one day.
If you could combine them, so you could like be Becky in Henry VIII's court eating swans. How would Becky cope with that? That would just be.
Well, I'm not sure.
I'll move on. This is going.
Maybe at this point Becky could edit herself in answering this question, so we would.
Yeah.
Okay. Who are we on to? Charmaine. Would you rather be able to only whisper or only able to shout?
I'd like to be able to whisper. rather than shout, even though I'm very renowned for my shouting. Especially by my kids. Just whisper gently, just talk gently. Because I always feel that if you are gentle with an approach to someone, you get much more of a reaction than if you shout. So for me, it would be whisper.
I'd love the ability to whisper. That would be quite cool. Okay, Sophie, is technology more harmful or helpful to humanity?
Ooh. I would definitely have to say it's a combination. Like, the way it can be used can be harmful, but it can be helpful at the same time. Like, obviously with COVID, like being able to contact people, that's been so helpful, having technology as a form of contact. But at the same time, it can be harmful because like, you might have stuff to do. And I know I'm someone who can just scroll through like Instagram or Facebook or anything for hours and not actually get anything done. And some of the things that you view on there can be harmful for sure. So I definitely have to say it's a combination. Like, I wouldn't go between more towards one than the other.
Right, number 39. Who would you want to invite to church but are afraid to? Whoa, okay. My mother.
Okay.
I have invited her. She didn't like it. She came reluctantly because we were all going and it was Christmas Day and she didn't feel like she should probably sit on her own for Christmas Day. And I also know she's never going to watch this, so it's fine. Jonny, what one moment stands out the most for you with an experience of God?
So it's not really one moment, but it's one moment that kept repeating itself. So the first, I've told some of you this already. So the first Soul Survivor I ever went to, I just remember so clearly every night in the Big Top, without fail, like having to go out because I was just crying so much. But it was just like tears of like joy. It was like confusion, but it was brilliant. And I just remember one of my friends used to come out with me every night and be like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I'm not sad. I'm happy crying, but I can't explain it." And I just like, for me, that was the moment, that was the real turning point. Like before then I had experienced the Holy Spirit and I knew what it was about, but it was that kind of week, which is like a long moment, I guess, isn't it really? That like, I was like, oh, this is a thing. I guess it's like, well, kind of when the penny dropped almost.
And did that happen other times at Soul Survivor as well? Or is it just that one time?
I think it hasn't happened, not in the same way. Like obviously I've had experiences at Soul Survivor since then, but I think it was that first time it was just so, like, I mean, for those of you who are watching that have been to Soul Survivor, or even anything similar, it's so different to anything you've experienced before. And I think my way of dealing with that was just to pour water out my eyes. But it was, yeah, I mean, it was brilliant.
What was one of the best days in your life?
Oh, I think one of the best days in my life was the day I got married. I absolutely loved my wedding day. Absolutely loved my wedding day.
What can you think of, like one thing that was particularly special that we'd like to we weren't there but we could maybe share?
Yeah, I think for me, my dad gave me the opt-out clause before church and said, if this isn't something you really want to do, you don't have to do it. And coming from my dad, I was quite taken aback, but he was being very honest and very real in that moment. And to know that he loved me enough to say, if this isn't the right thing, you don't really want to do, you don't have to do it. And obviously it's a memory. My dad died in 2017, but it's a real memory that sits with me because I know how much my dad was never a person to say how much he loved us as children, but we knew we were loved. But that moment for me was a real tender moment because my dad really kind of said, well, we don't have to. And I said, Dad, I wouldn't do this if I didn't want to do this. I definitely want to be married to this man. But it was just, it was so gently said and so honest. And it's one of those moments, I hold on to. But I just love my wedding day. The sun shone. It was an Easter weekend, an Easter Saturday, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful day. Everything could go. Lots of things went wrong before the wedding day with cake and all sorts of stuff. But the actual day, the actual wedding vows and the church and the people who were with.
That sounds amazing. Sophie, if you could have dinner with a celebrity, who would it be?
Every celebrity's just gone out of my head right now. I don't know. There's not really anyone I particularly want to. I guess.
Do you not play that game of like, if you had a celebrity dinner party, these are the who
would be there? Yeah.
We do that quite a lot. It's a good card journey game.
I actually can't think of anyone.
Jonny, who would you have?
Yeah, I would love
Charmaine. Say that again.
Like, it's one of my all-time favourites because she would just make me laugh all the time, and I just love it.
Who was that?
Whoopi Goldberg.
Ah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah. I reckon Victoria would. I wouldn't mind Emma Thompson. I think they'd both be on my list of dinner party people.
Yeah.
What about you, Jonny?
I don't really know. I don't really like people, and I don't really like food, so that's a joke. I don't know who I'd have, though. It's a tricky one. I would say I think I'm gonna have to say David Attenborough, just because I think he has for what I do in my life, like just to spend some time with him would be amazing. And just to sort of hear his stories and things like that.
Do you find it easy to pray? No, not really. Sometimes very, very much, and usually very short stuff. I don't find it easy to do sort of long intercessions, and like we have in church when somebody will pray for ages and ages, considering how much I like talking. But I think I certainly don't find the bit of praying when you listen back to what God's saying very easy. I'm not very good at reading books that have got other people have written prayers. So I do tend to, I often find when I'm painting, when I'm rollering and I'm just rolling up and down or painting with a paintbrush, people pop to my mind, and I then sort of just talk about them to God. And often then he'll say something and I might text them or something. So that's the time I tend to listen. I need almost my body to be distracted so that my mind and my soul is free to talk to God. But it's very easy for life to sort of clutter it out. Jonny, who has most influenced you?
So when I looked at the questions beforehand, I thought, I hope I don't get asked this one because I don't really know. And here we are. It's a tricky one. I don't really know. Lots of people have influenced me in lots of different ways in my life. I mean, I guess the stock answer is my parents. But I really mean that, actually, because I think not just for me, but like for Joe and Abby as well, they've always supported us to do what we want to do and like encouraged us in our passions. And like, you look at the three of us now, what we're doing, we're all following what we want to do, because as we grew up, we were never told you can't do that. It was always like, let's encourage you and let's build you up in that.
Yeah.
And and I look back at it now and I think I was so fortunate to have that.
Yeah.
And so I guess really in terms of what I do in my life, it's my parents, because they enabled me to to really explore what I wanted to do, and then do this.
Excellent.
And my mum's going to watch this. This is going to be very embarrassing. I've never actually told them that.
Go next. Charmaine, if you were a slightly different tack at this point, if you're a chocolate bar, which one would you be and why?
I'm not really into chocolate. Chocolate isn't one of my favourite things.
I can see Sophie's going, you've got a list in your mind, aren't you? I'll be any of them.
I've got to eat. I've got a fancy chocolate to eat it. So it's not something would be my first choice of eating. I suppose a Cadbury's cream egg is probably something I would eat occasionally. I'm into nuts myself. I'd rather eat Brazil nuts or cashew nuts or something like that. So I suppose nuts covered in chocolate would be something I would probably eat. Like your Ferrero Rochers and stuff like that. So something with nuts.
Sophie, how do you pronounce the word BATH?
Bath. Well, I guess I say it if it's the object, I say it differently to the actual place.
Oh.
But I wouldn't be able to tell you now, like, what.
Where do you get a train to?
Bath.
And if you don't have a shower, you have a
bath.
Bath.
I say it's slightly different, yeah. I don't know why.
That's about like a bit like me with Newcastle and Newcastle. There's a castle in Newcastle.
Yeah.
What is happening?
Messing with Johnny's head.
don't know you.
Oh, what would you say?
Bath.
Bath.
Bath
Yeah.
every time. Yeah.
Okay. No. I've got that question from Jonathan. Well, I can't remember quite how it's worded. Oh, there we go. Explain consubstantiation. Should we just miss this one out? I didn't say it because then I did look this one up. The Catholic idea at when you have bread and wine at communion, it transubstantiates. So the bread and wine actually changes into the body and blood of Jesus. Consubstantiation is a bit like it's a bit more Anglican than that, and somehow it stays as bread and wine, but also in sort of the spirit of God inhabits. So it becomes Jesus' body and blood, but not really actually. Whereas the Catholics, when it's transubstantiation, it becomes something different. Con is with, rather than trans, which is the change, obviously, from one to another. So consubstantiation is somehow, it's the theology of saying that it stays as bread and wine, but it doesn't actually become Jesus' blood and body, but it's something more than just bread and wine. And then you probably get a low church thing where they just go, yeah, it's just bread and wine, but we remember Jesus. So you've got a sort of sliding scale on communion. If you were going to have a bath or a bath in something that wasn't water, what beverage would you want in the water? Or what would you want in the bath? Bath.
I would say either very, very, very watered down orange squash. So it's basically just like being water, or custard.
Ooh, custard, that'd be good.
And then I'd roll around and pretend that I was like a sticky toffee pudding.
I just reckon orange squash would be really sticky. It'd be all right when you're in it, and then it'd go sticky when you got out.
But custard, that wouldn't be a problem at all, would it?
No. Eat it, it's fine.
Okay, Charmaine, how do you pronounce SCONE?
Gone.
Are we in agreement on that one?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Excellent. Move on. Sophie, is the Bible still relevant?
I would say yes. Like most of it's what happened to God's people like thousands of years ago. But like there's still definitely passages that can help you know who God is now. Like his character, that's all going to be the same. And there's going to be passages in there that help you to understand like situations as well, or just kind of help guide you to the right way. So yeah, I would say it's still relatable to now.
Can I answer this one as well? Is that allowed?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I would say that I think in the Bible you have this sort of two parts of it. You've got one which is like the stories of what happened, which is like history. That doesn't change. Like the Israelites did leave Egypt, no matter if it was 500 years after or 1,000 years after. That's what happened. Then you have other bits which are like the bits that are relevant to people's lives, and it's people are the same throughout history. They make the same mistakes, they have the same problems, the same worries, and actually what you see in the Bible is how those problems, worries, and issues were addressed 2,000 years ago. And we have those same things now, and it's looking at, well, if it was like that 2,000 years ago, what does that mean for us today? So even though you might read it and think, this makes no sense because we don't live in Israel 2,000 years ago or whatever, but actually they probably have the same worries, the same anxieties as we have now, and actually God is still in there and still wants to help us, even if it looks different. That's what I would say.
And there are passages as well that when you read them, really come alive in the situation you're in.
Yeah.
You've read it 1,000 times, but it's never made the same impact as it has this once in your situation on your journey. So I do feel it can speak to you, very relevant today. And even though you may not be looking for it, it might be just what you need. It says what you need at that particular moment in time.
Good answers. I've got another Bible question. What is your least favourite book of the Bible, and why is it Leviticus? It's not. I love Leviticus. I'm reading Leviticus at the moment. I think it is randomly slightly one of my favourite Bible books. It's just, yeah, thanks for that, Jonny.
Oh no, I was looking. There was a mouse behind the screen.
Oh, okay. But I love Leviticus, and at the moment I'm just at the bit where it's talking about all these sacrifices, and it's ridiculously complicated. And I was reading a bit about one day every year, there's the Day of Atonement, and the priest has to go into the Holy of Holies in the middle of the desert in this tent, and he has to kill a couple of animals, and he has to do all sorts of things, and it was only once a year, and the rules are ridiculous. So I just have this image of somebody shouting over the tent going, now you dip your finger in the blood, and now you touch his toe, no I said his toe, and all this sort of thing. And it's just so complicated, and that was to get forgiveness for the whole people of Israel. And yet then there's a bit in Hebrews, I think it's chapter 10, where it says we can daily enter the Holy of Holies. And so we can, because of Jesus, we don't have to do any of that sacrifice stuff. We still need to, because actually we screw up just as much as the Israelites did. But because of Jesus, we don't have to do all those sacrifices. So Leviticus, although it's sort of slightly, it seems boring because there's lots of rules about mildew and what to do if if something goes wrong. But actually, it's really exciting because it's all that picture of what actually Jesus has done this. So it's not my least favourite book of the Bible. So I don't know what my least favourite book is yet. Has anybody got a least favourite book?
Not really.
I'd say Leviticus if it is yours.
I mean, like the books like Leviticus, I think, can be the hardest to engage with sometimes.
Yeah.
Because they're the most removed from what we do now. What we've just said about them. I don't know how Becky's going to edit it, but the question before this was the one about is the Bible still relevant today? And I think it is, but some parts it's easier to understand why. And when you're reading through something, it just feels like rules. You're like, well, we don't have this now, so why am I having to read this, or why am I choosing to read this? And I think that's why people struggle with it. That's why I struggle with it.
Yeah. But I think if you can then see it in the light of what Jesus has done, and to go, wow, for generations people had to do all this stuff, and actually we can just come straight to God. Is suddenly it makes it alive for me. Make it, and suddenly it becomes like, well, we don't have to do all those rules because of the grace and mercy God showed us through Jesus.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's hard to engage with, but it's worth it, I reckon.
Yeah, you should all go and read Leviticus. That's an action for this week, guys.
Why do you think talking to your friends about God can sometimes feel awkward?
I don't find it awkward talking about God to my friends. Anybody who knows me knows I have a faith. It's just one of those things that if they accept me, they accept who I am, and my makeup is I have a faith. So even my neighbours, they know I go to church, they know I have a faith. And if they ask me what I do in a week, I will say, oh, and on Sunday I did, or on Wednesday I had house group. So they know. So it's not a case of, it's trying to move on to the next step and making them want to be more interested in faith and in that. That's where I kind of want to be, or am at times, is actually saying to them, God lives in me, and it's I'd love. We just recently in church, like you are, we did Revelations, and you kind of see the chaos and what's happening, and it's keeping the faith through all that has gone through Revelation. So it's kind of almost putting that into today with every day with the chaos that we're in at the moment, and actually showing them that we have a hope because we have Jesus.
I would say, well, I mean, most of the people that I'm associated with are already Christians. So obviously I do a lot of stuff with church. I do a lot of stuff like the study I'm doing at the moment, that's with Baptist College. It's very church based. The only people that I'm not like as in they're not Christians or have a faith as such are my work colleagues. And I guess it is very hard to be able to just talk openly sometimes about my faith. They know, most of them know I've got a faith. Most of them know I go to church and I'm doing all these studies. But other than that, that's as far as it goes, really. So, yeah. It's hard to be able to talk about it at work, though, for sure.
Yeah. I think I get a bit of a free rein in that because I was quite public about the fact of becoming a minister. And I put it on Facebook, so all sorts of people know, and it's on my work page and stuff like that. So I turn up places and people know there's something different. But actually moving it on from being something to do with church to something about Jesus, I sometimes find a bit of a hard a step. And with friends, that's sometimes hard because you're so used to the conversations we always have. And I think when we settle into conversations that you just sort of, you know, that you talk to this friend about that and you talk to this friend about it, and actually to move that conversation to something different is just sort of, it's shifting that sort of social thing. You know, if you've got friends who've got kids in common, or, you know, it's somebody you do sport with, well, actually the people I play netball with, we talk about netball, and actually to shift that conversation to something different can sometimes feel a bit jarring. But actually the times when I've done it, it's usually people are quite open to it because they're curious as to what on earth are you doing being part of a church. And so it's sort of quite an open conversation in that way.
That's the other thing as well, your stories and the experiences you have with God, nobody can take that away from you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, that's the direction I tend to go, is they ask me something, I give them a story of how God has worked in my life. And that they can't deny that fact. They have to kind of process it in a way and maybe come back to me and ask me further questions. And I think with work, again, it was a case that Psalm 139 used to be quite a useful psalm because it just says everything in there, and you can just use that and say to people, do you know you're fearfully and wonderfully made? And I go, do you know that's in the Bible? And you know, and it's just making it interesting. Yeah, it is difficult until you get to do it.
I think it's a good last question because otherwise we're going to use them all up for next week.
That's the same ones.
I think we can all answer this one. What is your favourite book apart from the Bible? Okay, so my favourite book is this, which is Philip Yancey's What's So Amazing About Grace. Have you read it? It's a good book. It talks about grace and what is, well, obviously the title, What's So Amazing About Grace, and talks about just how Jesus interacts with us in different ways in different parts of our lives, and why it's just so awesome knowing Jesus and how he loves us despite us screwing up, but actually he still loves us and he wants the best for us. So that would be my recommendation. Visual aid, you see. Jonny, go for it.
So mine's a little bit like, not embarrassing, but like explain whatever. So it's not a Christian book, not at all. So it's a series of books, and it's called The Chronicles of Ancient Darkness. It's designed for like teenagers, but I've read them like repeatedly since I was probably about 14, and I just love them. It's such a good story, and it's got a wolf in it, which is very exciting, and I just love them. So I suggest you go and look them up, but you don't have to.
Who are they by?
It's by an author called Michelle Paver.
Charmaine, what about you?
My favourite author is Francine Rivers. Yeah, and I think my favourite of hers is Redeeming Love. Lovely little story.
So what's that about for those who haven't read it?
Oh, so it's the story, basically the story of Hosea in the Bible and his wife, Gomer, and all the times that she was unfaithful to him, but how he always took her back. And so it's basically, it's God's love for us, really, that, you know, we can be who we are and walk away from loads and loads of times, but he would always come back with open arms. So it is a really lovely story.
And Sophie, what about you?
That's probably a question you shouldn't ask me. I've got way too many favourite books. I guess for like different things as well. Like there's a favourite book for different subjects, different themes. Just for like a casual, like relaxing read for me I'm going to go for a book that I've read more times than most books, and that would have to be the Hunger Games series, for sure. But then a book that I read for the start of my module is a story called A Story of Dibs, I think the title was. So it was basically about a boy and like a therapist kind of getting to know him and building his confidence, and just really help remind me like why I do youth work is to be able to get to know those like outcasts, kind of like people on the fringes, which I really, really enjoyed reading. I
think we've done most of the questions. I'm sure they'll look at some of them again next week. But should we stop there, because otherwise Becky's got to.
Yeah, I think so. Have you all?
Sorry,
Did you all
Becky.
practice? Did you all practice the group song that I sent through to you to finish off with? I'll
No.
take that as a no then. It's a bit rude, isn't it? Cool.
It's good to have a completely random. I think that was the most random discussion I've had for quite a long time.
Excellent. Well, it was good. I think it was good. We think we covered lots of topics.
Yeah. Caused chaos for Becky to try and edit it, so that's always
Yeah.
good.